morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today to observe Memorial Day. I am Pete Scott, Chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee. I would like to thank our speakers today, Colin Chuck, Brian Fitzpatrick, Maria Collette, Barry Luber, our Township Manager, the Township Supervisors, the Veterans Association of Military Music, where you've already heard some of their great stuff. Scout Troop 133 that is standing there with the colors. Mission Barbecue, which is going to help feed us. Our police department, fire department, and ambulance corps who are all attending today. I'd like also to thank Joe Knox, our Director of Public Works and staff, for putting all this material up, and Janine Winslow for us getting things ready. And finally, I'd like to recognize our Veterans Affairs Committee, which for the most part is standing in the back. Okay, now if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for the National Anthem. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is Pastor Heck from Zoe Fellowship Church? Podium is yours. Please remove your covers.
He was in the first third grade class I taught at St. Mary's School in Mars, Minnesota. All 34 of my students were dear to me, but Mark Eklund was one in a million. Very neat in appearance, but had that happy to be alive attitude that made even his occasional mischievousness delightful. Mark talked incessantly and had to remind him again and again that talking without permission was not acceptable. What impressed me so much, though, was his sincere response every time I had to correct him for his misbehaving. Thank you for correcting me, sister. I didn't know what to make of it at first, but before long I became accustomed to hearing it many times a day. One morning my patience was growing thin when Mark talked once too often, and then I made a novice teacher mistake. I looked at him and said, "If you say one more word, I'm going to tape your mouth shut." It wasn't 10 seconds later when Chuck blurted out, "Mark is talking again." I hadn't asked any of the students to help me watch Mark, but since I had stated the punishment in front of the class, I had to act on it. I remember the scene as if it had occurred this morning. I walked to my desk, very deliberately opened my drawer, and took out a roll of masking tape. Without saying a word, I proceeded to Mark's desk, tore off 2 pieces of tape, and made an X over his mouth. I returned to the front of the room, and as I glanced at Mark to see how he was doing, he winked at me. That did it. I started laughing. The class cheered as I walked back to Mark's desk, removed the tape, and shrugged my shoulders. His first words were, "Thank you for correcting me, sister." At the end of the year, I was asked to teach junior high math. The years flew by, and before I knew it, Mark was in my classroom again. He was more handsome than ever and just as polite. Since he had to listen carefully to my instructions in the new math, he did not talk as much in the 9th grade as he had in the 3rd. One Friday, things just didn't feel right. We had worked hard on a new concept all week, and I sensed that the students were frustrated with themselves and edgy with one another. I had to stop this crankiness before I got out of hand, so I asked them to list the names of the other students in the room on 2 sheets of paper, leaving a space between each name. Then, I told them to think of the nicest thing they could say about each of their classmates and write it down. It took the remainder of the class period to finish the assignment, and as the students left the room, each one handed me the papers. Charlie smiled. Mark said, "Thank you for teaching me, sister. Have a good weekend." That Saturday, I wrote down the name of each student on a separate sheet of paper, and I listed what everyone else had said about them. On Monday, I gave each student his or her list. Before long, the entire class was smiling. You were hearing things around the classroom like, "Really? I never knew that meant anything to anyone. I didn't know others liked me so much." No one ever mentioned the papers in class again. I never knew if they discussed them. I never knew if they talked about them with their parents, but it didn't matter. The exercise had accomplished its purpose, and the students were happy with themselves and one another once again. That group of students moved on several years later on the day of the funeral. It was difficult enough at the graveside. The pastor said the usual prayers, and the bugler played taps. One by one, those who loved Mark walked by the coffin. I was the last one. And as I stood there, one of the soldiers who had acted as a pallbearer came up to me. "Were you Mark's math teacher?" I nodded, and I continued to stare at the coffin. "Mark talked a lot about you." After the funeral, most of Mark's former classmates headed to Chuck's farmhouse for lunch. Mark's mother and father were there, obviously waiting for me. "We want to show you something," his father said, taking a wallet out of his pocket. "They found this on Mark when he was killed. We thought you might recognize it." Opening the billfold, he carefully removed 2 worn pieces of notebook paper that had obviously been taped, folded, and refolded many times. I knew without looking that the papers were the ones on which I listed all the good things each of Mark's classmates had said about him. "Thank you so much for doing that," Mark's mother said. As you can see, Mark treasured it. Mark's classmates started to gather around. Charlie smiled rather sheepishly and said, "I still have my list. It's in the top drawer of my desk at home." Chuck's wife said, "Chuck asked me to put this in our wedding album." "I have mine too," Marilyn said. "It's in my diary." Then Vicky, another classmate, reached into her pocketbook, took out her wallet, and showed her worn and frazzled list to the group. "I carry this with me all times," Vicky said without batting an eyelash. I think we all saved our lists. That's when I finally sat down and cried. I cried for Mark, for all his friends who would never see him again. Every day, we add to people's stories. Do we add good things? Or do we add bad things? Do we add things that they will remember? Or things they choose to forget? Every day we interact with people. Some of them are soldiers. Some of them are police officers, people who serve. The day may come, and they may not come home from what they do. What will their story say? What will our stories be of them? Just recently, Officer Stephen Plum Jr., Warrington Police Department, passed away very suddenly on May 16th. He was an 8-year veteran of the police department. He was a Marine Corps veteran, having been deployed to Iraq. Stephen was 38 years old, with 5 children, 8 months to 14 years. I'll ask for a moment of silence as we remember Stephen and his family. Father, we thank you for the memory of Stephen and others like him. Memory of people in our lives who have served and died. I thank you that we were part of their story and they were part of ours. And I pray that every word that we do and every action that we do, from this point on, we always remember these are things that will be part of the story. Thank you for the help that you give us to make them good. In Jesus' name.
Thank you, Pastor. That was very inspiring. Corporal Alex Moldovsky would like to say a few words now regarding Officer Plum.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I want to start off by thanking the Township Administration, the residents of Warrington Township, Judge Wortman, State Rep Polinchuk, Congressman Fitzpatrick, who reached out to our department while he was overseas in Ukraine, and all the Bucks County Police Departments that covered our calls and helped us through this very difficult time. I was asked to say a few words about Steve. He was a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. He served for 4 years from 2003 until 2007 and earned the rank of corporal. During his tenure in the Marines, he served as a rifleman with the 2nd LAR Battalion, 2nd Marine Division, and was deployed to Iraq, where he earned the Combat Action Ribbon and other awards. He also spent time stationed in Japan and the Philippines. Officer Plum was an 8-year veteran of the Warrington Township Police Department. He was devoted to the K-9 unit, which he helped start in 2018. He was partners with K-9 Murphy. Steve served with honor and dedication. He joined the Warrington Township Police Department in 2014 and over the past 8 years served with the following specialty units: the Major Incident Response Team, Highway Patrol, Narcotics, and the K-9 unit. Steve earned multiple awards and commendations during his time with Warrington. He was a great human being. Hands down, he was the funniest officer in our department and always made people laugh, especially when he pulled pranks, and yes, Barry, he pulled a lot of pranks. He was also a very caring individual who would look out for you even at the expense of losing family time. Steve would give you the shirt off his back. He would even probably give you the underwear that he was wearing if you asked. I took a motorcycle trip with my fiance to New York, and before we left, Steve told us, if you break down, call me. I'll bring my trailer up, and I'll get you home. That's the kind of man he was. Dedication, integrity, and service. That is Steve Plum. On behalf of the Warrington Township Police Department, I want to thank you veterans for your service. You have done more for this country than most people ever imagine, understand, or experience. So thank you.
Very nicely done, Corporal. One of our core reasons for gathering today is to remember those that cannot be with us, and specifically to honor those for whom this field is named for. William John Igoe, Private First Class, killed in action, July 11th, 1967. James Frank Porter, PFC, killed in action. Americans gather in a free society, unified with the common purpose of honoring uncommon bravery. We are their legacy. Regardless of the place or the war fought, the purity of their sacrifice is without question. Young men and women lost their lives in order to make freedom of others possible. From the American Revolution to our current operations against terrorism, 1 million American men have made the supreme sacrifice while serving in the military in the wars and conflicts. We honor them all, not just those with the highest medals or the heroes who fought the most famous battles. They all died so we can cherish the things we love most: freedom, country, and family. That is why we're gathered here on Memorial Day, to honor the memory of the fallen warriors who have given everything for their country. We are also reminded on this day that in each generation, brave men and women will always step forward to take the oath of allegiance as the members of America's armed forces, willing to fight and, if necessary, die for freedom. As Americans, we should always remember that freedom is not free. It only is possible because our fallen heroes have paid its high price. A price paid that enabled us to have ceremonies and observances like this in communities across our great country. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers today. Representative Todd Pollenchak has served as our voice in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives for the 144th Legislative District since January 1st, 2019. One of his committee assignments is Veteran Affairs and Emergency Preparedness. As a veteran, he devotes a significant amount of time assisting and supporting veterans. In 2020, he was recognized for his efforts by the VFW with an award of commendation for his meritorious distinguished service in furthering the aims and ideals of the VFW. He is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy, a retired Navy commander, 20 years of service, and he served in Desert Storm as a combat pilot. He also previously had my job as a past chairman, and I think that's the most important.
Thank you very much. That is the most important. By the way, Senator, I think we got to make a phone call and get a better PA system for Warrington here. She's got more juice than me, so I'm going to ask her to help me on that one. But anyway, I want to thank everyone for letting me be here today to speak. I prepared words, but a lot of you have probably heard me here about 10 or 15 times, so I'm like, what can I say different? And I decided I just want to talk about what this day means to me. So I'm a veteran. And I appreciate, I got probably 3 or 4 people that thank me for my service today, and I appreciate that. There was a day back in the Vietnam days when people didn't get thanked for their service, and they had to live with that. So anyone who does that to me, I really appreciate that gesture. It's important. But today's not about that. Today's about the people that are not with us anymore. Whether killed in action or gone away, everybody here is here because you all have a story, just like I do. And I'm going to indulge myself and tell you a couple of stories about some people that are important to me. And I hope you go home today and do the same thing at your picnics or barbecues or whatever you do. Talk about that person that's no longer with us and your memories of them. And that's what this day is about in my mind. So I'm going to start, obviously, like the corporal did with Officer Steve Plum. I didn't know him well, but I knew him. He came to a bunch of my events. What Steve brought was a willingness to interact with the community, and we're very blessed here in Warrington in that our law enforcement is an integral part of the community, and we're not afraid to go up and talk to them and integrate with them and hang out with them. They play basketball over at our new park over at Dr. Adams Park, and Steve Plum was that guy. He's been to my veterans events, he's been to my senior events, bringing Officer Murphy with him, and that was important. Steve's a former Marine. Steve's always going to be a Marine, so to Steve, Semper Fi. The next guy I want to mention is, I had a roommate in flight school. If you all see the campaign stuff, I don't think there's anyone in this room who's probably not seen my sign somewhere around these parts. There's a little red airplane on it. It's an A4 Skyhawk. And my roommate crashed in an A4 at flight school, and that's my homage to him. Scott Duncan Everyone gets cool call signs. I'm a big guy, so my call sign was Slim, which, you know, you don't get to pick it. I didn't get to be Axeman or Iceman or anything cool like that. Scott Duncan was Slam Duncan. I thought that was a pretty cool nickname. So my signs will always be in honor of Slam Duncan. I had another roommate, Reggie Carpenter. Reggie went on to be a naval attaché to France and Argentina, Navy captain. Reggie and I got stationed at the very tough duty station in Key West, Florida. All right, we had a year at Naval Air Station, Boca Chica, Key West, Florida, where we were learning to fly the A-3, my reconnaissance airplane I flew in the Gulf War. Only Reggie's legs were too short to get full rudder throw, so the poor guy had to leave and go fly F-18 Hornets for a living. He became a squadron commander, led attacks into Iraq, and became a gosh darn war hero. So Reggie passed away while working in Argentina, and to this day I'll never forget sitting at our place in Key West, listening to Jimmy Buffett songs and him talking about how he wanted to be a fighter pilot, and God made that happen for him. So that's Reggie. The next guy I want to talk about is a guy named Jeff Wales. Wales was my navigator in the Gulf War. I had a total hydraulic failure once, and we were flying back, flight control hydraulic. I'm muscling this airplane around, I'm sweating bullets. And those who know me, I sweat in the dead of winter, so it wasn't much to make me sweat. I'm sweating bullets, and I got my oxygen mask hanging off, and Wales has his oxygen mask hanging off, and I hear a lighter. You don't put lighters around oxygen masks. That's a bad idea. He lights a cigarette, and he's got a cigarette sitting there with his oxygen mask hanging there, and I go, Wales, what are you doing? I go, that's the guy who landed the plane. And it took the pressure off me, and my comment to him was, if we live through this, I'm going to kill you. And his response was, I hope you get the chance. Well, I got the chance. But he took the heat off me and got the pressure off, and we turned it into a lighter situation, and we got it done. So that's my whale story. And my last one is, I had a guy tell me once, oh, you're going aboard ship? Make friends with the cooks. Make friends with the mess cooks. So I would go fly off the carrier, come back at 3 in the morning, and I'm hungry, and I made friends with the cooks. I'm not a dumb guy. Look at me. Look at my size. Obviously, I made friends with the cooks. I got the combination of the refrigerator. I could go in at 3 in the morning and make myself a ham sandwich. It was the best ham sandwich on the planet when you come back from a sortie. And I know I'm going to choke up now, but that was Petty Officer First Class Frank Pollinchuk, my dad, who was a Navy cook. So this is what it's about to me today. It's about my dad and people like that. So celebrate those that are gone. And to my dad, Frank Pollinchuk, God bless.
Thank you, Tom. That was very good. Senator Maria, I have trouble speaking after that. Senator Maria Collette represents the 12th senatorial district across parts of Bucks County and Montgomery County. It encompasses Hatboro, Horsham, Warminster, and Warrington, among other townships. Maria is a lifelong advocate of people in need. She began her career as an attorney representing the interests of children victimized by abuse and neglect as a Deputy Attorney General in Camden County, New Jersey. She then transitioned to a career in nursing where she worked at the bedside as a level 1 trauma nurse in pediatric home health and in long care working with aging adults. As a senator, she is committed to making sure Pennsylvanians have a clean, safe drinking water and access to quality, affordable health care. She has a BA in English Literature from the University of Maryland at College Park, a JD from Rutgers University School of Law, and a BSN from Drexel University.
Good morning, everyone. It's always hard to follow Representative Pollinchuk. I'm Senator Maria Collette, and I have the true honor of representing the 12th Senatorial District, as you heard, parts of Montgomery and Bucks counties, and I'm truly honored to be here with all of you today to commemorate Memorial Day and to pay tribute to those who lost their lives serving our country. As we gather of a quote by President John F. Kennedy, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter the words, but to live by them. The democratic values and moral virtues liberty, equality, justice, and freedom upon which our country was founded, and which our men and women in uniform have fought so hard to protect, must be equally protected right here in this country by everyday Americans. And while we take this time to honor those who have died in the line of duty, our greatest show of respect and appreciation is not through our words here today, but through our actions. That's a sentiment that I hold with me as I serve this community, and is one that my husband and I try to impart on our son every day. Last weekend on Armed Forces Day, I had the honor of meeting several local Gold Star families. They so eloquently spoke about their pride and their grief as they shared their loved ones' stories. As moving as their strength was, I know this is a sacrifice that no family wants to make. As the strength and service of those fathers, mothers, siblings, and children today, I hope we can find some solace in celebrating the enduring spirit of America for which these brave servicemen and women gave their lives. As we can see from the many veterans with us this morning, Warrington has no shortage of heroes in its midst. We are here today because of your dedication to the American dream. Your heroism will not be forgotten. Again, thank you for your service and thank you for having me. Happy Memorial Day.
Thank you, Marie. Brian Fitzpatrick is our congressman for the 1st Senatorial District of Pennsylvania. For the previous 14 years, he served our nation as both an FBI special agent and as a federal prosecutor, fighting both domestic and international political corruption, and supporting global counterterrorism and counterintelligence efforts, including being embedded with the U.S. Special Forces as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. I find Brian to be a very unassuming guy. I've seen him in so many places, unexpected, while working with veterans. One year we were putting the ornaments on a Christmas tree outside the Doylestown Courthouse. It was a remembrance with everybody's name on it that passed away in Bucks County for, kind of a remembrance for him. There he was in line, unassuming. Nobody really knew, I think, who he was. We had a tour of honor just last month where we went down to Washington recognizing World War II, Korea and Vietnam veterans or people of that era that were in the military. There was Brian to shake our hands. We have an end of the parade of the Doylestown Parade. There was Brian at the ceremony at the end of the parade. And I'm just so impressed with that. Back to the script. In the 117th Congress, he was elected co-chair of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. So that's a group that's trying to get both sides of the aisle working together. Kind of strange in these times. But, yeah, what more could you ask for? I think it's what we all want, is talking. He is a ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Europe, Energy, the Environment, and Cyber. He was appointed by House leadership to currently serve on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. He is a licensed attorney, a certified public accountant, and a certified emergency medical technician.
Good morning. First, to Todd's point, there's a lot of people across this country that view Memorial Day as a kickoff of the summer season, draped with sales and barbecues and whatnot. Thank you to all of you for remembering what Memorial Day really is, especially those who brought your kids to be here. Of all the days on the calendar that are honored and commemorated, there is not a single one that's more important than this one. Not a single one. The words Happy Memorial Day actually should never be uttered. Memorial Day is not a celebration, it's a commemoration. And thank you for remembering that. And that's the word, to Todd's point, that we need to spread. Because at all points in our nation's history, and especially now, recognizing those who protect democracy is so important. And if you look at the history of the American soldier, throughout all the battles, from the very first one of the Revolutionary War all the way to the current struggles and the counterterrorism fights, the theme has always been the same. The American soldier has always fought on the side of good, fighting against evil. They've always fought on the side of democracy against dictatorships. They've always fought on the side of freedom over authoritarianism. I just spent the past week in Ukraine. I got back at midnight last night, actually. And getting to spend time with the Ukrainian military frontline servicemen and servicewomen, seeing their courage, I told them this. I said it's very reminiscent of what we've learned about our own nation's birth, the Continental Army, that fought right here down the road in the turning point of the Revolutionary War in Washington's Crossing on Christmas night of 1776. They're doing the same thing that our first generation of soldiers have done. They're fighting what is deemed to be an insurmountable battle, fighting a military that they're outnumbered 10 to 1, completely outmatched from a technological standpoint. They're leaving their spouses, they're leaving their children, all for something not for them. They're fighting so that people they don't know and people they never will know will enjoy the freedom that they grew up with, dating back to 1991. And they're willing to sacrifice their lives for it. They're not donating money to the cause. They're not volunteering. All those things are obviously important for us to do here stateside. They're willing to give up their life. President Zelensky is willing to give up his life for his country. There is no more noble and honorable way to live one's life. That is what Memorial Day is about. Our nation is 245 years old. That's just a few generations. And yet, we're the world's oldest democracy. No democracy on planet Earth has survived more than a few generations. And yet we are all guilty by our human nature of taking that for granted. We can't fathom waking up in a world where the US dollar is not the world's currency standard. We can't fathom waking up in a world where the United States is not the world's economic superpower, where the United States is not the world's military superpower. Well, that can go away very quick. And the people of Ukraine are exhibit A of that. They never in a million years thought that their freedom would come under complete and unmitigated assault like it is. And the United States is not immune from that either. And that's why it's important that we look at Memorial Day to honor those who gave us the things that so many of us take for granted, like assembling here today, like our freedom of speech, like practicing whatever faith or no faith that we so choose. Freedom. It's not a given. As you pointed out, it is not free. And that's what Memorial Day represents to so many of us, all of us. And again, to Todd's point, I think that's what we're really going to be doing this whole week. We're talking to our friends and neighbors. Yes, thank a veteran. Tell the veterans you love them. But for especially our young people, make sure that they know the meaning of Memorial Day and what it really is about. And remind them of how fragile democracy is. And it's the American soldier, particularly the ones that gave up their life to bestow upon us this high honor to make sure that we can preserve it so that our children can enjoy those same freedoms. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much. You know, one of the things that the American Legion does and the VFW does is we go around to the different cemeteries in Douglas County as an example and place flags at those that have fallen. And one of the things I take care to make sure happens is that, you know, I'll invite the voices from around the community, and we use children from the Youth Detention Center. And what I tell them all to do is take a look at the stone. Read the name if you can. Look at the battle they fought in, because each one of these will have a marker that will say, you know, Revolutionary War, Civil War, and so forth. And it gives them a chance to think about what they're doing. They're not just placing a flag. You're remembering that person. And when you say their name, they're not forgotten. Okay, next thing's going to be hard for me. This morning, you know, Larry Bullock could not be with us, so I'm going to try to do his poem. I can't be like Larry. So we of Warrington gather again. We gather in this corner of this park, in this corner of our township, of our country, of our state, in the USA, of the North American continent, of the Western Hemisphere, of the Earth, the solar system, the universe, of the mind of God. Remember that from our town? By Thornton Wilder, Grover's Corners. How many of our towns will meet in quiet corners this weekend? Enough to make one grateful nation, I would hope. So we gather in the simple, perfect words of Lincoln and Gettysburg. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. Today, right now, we are all here, each of us, equal in this one very great regard. Not one of us has proved the measure of devotion to the country to those we honor today. It is a day of curious invocation. The dead to whom we pay unfeigned homage, in their silence have spoken with the greatest of import. Those who, more than self, their country loved, and mercy more than life, as Catherine Lee Bates wrote. We take this all too brief a time to pay them reverence as a country, and as a community. Community. So let's talk a minute about our corner of the world. These three sons of Warrington that we recognized earlier, for which this park is named, grew up in the late 40s, 50s, and early 60s. What a great time to be a kid. Warrington was different back there, as was the whole country. A lot more gravel roads, a lot fewer cars. Operation was the most sophisticated electronic game. Open field upon open field, in meadows and woods, rivulets, brooks, and streams, and the Neshaminy. And yes, we had our favorite swimming hole. Hedgerows and pheasants cackle, and foxes and deer in the orchard, all that are a playground, by daylight and starry night. Pick-up baseball games with paper plates for bases. Touch football that more often than not turned into tackle. Anyway, the smell of our dust the dust made when our bicycles went down dirt roads. Moonlight on acres and acres of pasture steeped in snow. Drift fences, sledding down the farmers' winding lanes, ice skating on honest-to-God ponds, and always a fire to warm us up. And none of us ever thinking, even imagining to think, that any of our number would find their names here inscribed. We gathered at this monument dedicated to the sons of Warrington. Allow me a little license with Shakespeare's St. Crispin's Day speech and put it this way. But we'll all remember, with true advantage, the lives here so engraved. Then shall the names and their persons be in our solemn hearts fresh recounted. Their story shall the wise of us tell the child, and Memorial Day shall never go by from this day to the ending of the world, but those in the memoriam be here remembered. Now would Fred Gaines come forward to recognize the veterans added to the memorial wall.
Thank you for having me. I'd like to introduce two of our supervisors here tonight, this afternoon. Supervisor Vanessa Mora, Supervisor Ruth Shem. At this time, I've been invited to recognize the names of 3 additional township residents who are being added to the memorial wall. 22 honorees are Sergeant Andrew C. Bracy, Jr. Andrew served in the Air Force in Vietnam. Captain Irina Garmiz. Irina served as a dental officer while with the Army in Iraq. Jackson, who's also served with the Army of Vietnam. These three individuals and others who have served share a heritage that is old as the country that we live in. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors of the residents of Warrington Township who serve, that are serving and will serve, I am honored to say thank you for your service. Andrew?
Irina, Captain Stanley. Okay, we'll hold on. W. Jackson. Fine, would you like to present them?
I'll leave that to you, sir.
So this is a really cool presentation that Brian Fitzpatrick brought for us. What is here, and I'll read this citation out. The flag of the United States of America. This is to certify that the accompanying flag was flown over the United States Capitol at the request of the Honorable Brian Fitzpatrick, Member of Congress, May 28, 2022, in memory of, and each one folks have this, but this one is Andrew C. Bracy, Jr. We'll hold on to this one. Would anybody in the audience like to stand up and say anything about a relative, husband, spouse, or has served in the military and since fallen?
Yes, John Kelly. I'll talk about my father, who served in South Philly guy. He served in the Philippines, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. It's a boatsman's mate for bringing the landing craft into the beaches. And he was there. And then he said, well, now you're going to go on the USS Texas, and you're going to invade November 1st, 45. Operation Olympic, you're going to invade mainland Japan. So we dropped the 2 bombs, and he said, I'll go back to the Philippines, finish up your time. So I wouldn't be here today because he was going to be bringing the troops in on the landing craft on November 1st, 45.
My father, Staff Sergeant Lawrence Rosenstock, he served in the United States Army in Korea and many other medals for his service, but nothing made him prouder than wearing the Purple Heart veteran hat that I bought him at the World War II Museum in New Orleans. He just took so much pride in wearing that hat, and people recognized him for it everywhere he went. So I honor my father today. Thank you.
My father, Nicholas Zdonek, he was in the Army, and he was second day in Normandy Beach. His injuries caused him to spend a year in the hospital in France, and then a year in the hospital in Atlantic City. Many years later, he had the courage to marry my mother and adopt 2 teenage girls. I'm one of them. I'm not a teenager anymore, but I'm very proud of my father.
My father-in-law, my wife's dad, he landed a couple days late at Normandy, He was there through a lot of the liberate some of the concentration camps. He left the service, got called back again, and served in Korea at the Chosun Reservoir.
Yeah, I'm honored to remember my father, Corporal Charles Schweitzer, who served in the Marine Corps, an Amtrak driver in the 2nd Tracks in Camp Lejeune. And he wanted to go to Korea and said, hey, send me to Korea, but we don't get a choice, you know, so he wound up not going to Korea. And actually, he kind of regretted that his whole life, you know, that he wanted to do that. But great man, Marine through and through, and inspired me to go in the Marine Corps actually afterwards too, and also so remember him today.
Jay Kelly, World War I in France. He was part of the famous Company D. I don't know if you read that book, The Remains of Company D. You would like it. He was the 18th Infantry. I had those bayonets and helmet and cheap gas masks they gave him back then, plastic eyes. And so I just want to honor him.
Honor my husband in the Air Force during the Vietnam, but he was also he was in a station in the Philippines for 2 years. But prior to that, when he was here in the United States, he was on the honor guard and would serve as the duty when the deceased soldiers returned to the United States. And he would tell me many stories about each of the soldiers, you know, for the ceremonies that he had to attend or serve as a military guard, honor guard. If that's the right thing, I don't know. You know what I mean, though.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks for all that. Thanks for sharing, everybody. Yeah, it's how we keep stuff alive, that we remember these fallen warriors. It's always a good thing to take the time. I'd also like to thank Andy. Andy was a member of the Veterans Affairs Committee. He was a quiet guy, a big guy, but his comments were always well thought out and right to the point. He was friendly. I loved sitting down and talking with him about old times. He and I were both in the Air Force, so in a typical meeting, you know, we would stand together and badmouth the other service. So, you know, that's common. So you got to do that. Okay, now for the medley of service anthems, please stand when you recognize your own service anthem. Our next tribute is with uncommon valor. Will our police come forward and be recognized? Come on, guys. Today we have a special Vietnam recognition as a country regarding how our Vietnam veteran era people were treated when they returned. Many of us remember those days clearly. March 29th, National Veterans Committee thought it was more appropriate to recognize it today, and perhaps next year on the March 29th. Veteran Affairs Committee member John DeShirt will now speak on the subject. John?
Thanks, Pete. I'm going to go off script for something that Congressman Fitzpatrick mentioned. And thank you very much, sir, for being here today, as well as all the other distinguished guests. But specifically to the kids that are here, I don't think we do enough as parents, and this is coming from somebody that served for 23 years in the Navy. We don't do enough to explain to our kids the value of what today means. So I do, and I hope everybody learns something from this today. Thank you. So again, thank you for everyone to attending the memorial service of Dr. John Disher, Lieutenant Commander, Medical Service Corps, United States Navy, retired. Our Veterans Affairs Committee is a proud partner of the Vietnam War Committee. many Vietnam-era veterans and their families from Warrington Township and the surrounding Bucks County communities here at Igoe Porter Wellings Memorial Field. For those that may not be aware, this official national commemoration was authorized by Congress, established under the Secretary of Defense, and launched by the President in 2012. Its primary purpose? To honor and thank the many men and women, Vietnam veterans, and their families for their service and sacrifice to our great nation. The Vietnam Veterans Recognition Act of 2017 formally established the 29th of March in perpetuity as a national day to recognize the previously unsung patriotism of Vietnam veterans. So now, National Vietnam War Veterans Day joins the 6 other military-centric national holidays codified in law, among them Independence Day, Veterans Day, and this most hallowed Memorial Day. In 2017, our Commander-in-Chief also issued a presidential proclamation which stated, and I quote, "To ensure the sacrifices of the 9 million heroes who served during this difficult chapter of our country's history are remembered for generations to come, I sign into law the Vietnam War Veterans Recognition Act of 2017. Throughout this commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War, we will honor those who answered our nation's call to duty. We vow to never again confuse personal disapproval of war with prejudice against those who honorably wear the uniform of our armed forces. With conviction, our nation pledges our enduring respect, our continuing care, and our everlasting commitment to all Vietnam veterans." Unquote. So why March 29th? 2 reasons. First, March 29th, 1973 was the last day U.S. combat troops departed Vietnam. And second, on March 29th, 1973 was the day Hanoi released the last of its acknowledged, and I quote, "acknowledged prisoners of war." The President's proclamation lists the number of veterans who served during this era as 9 million. This number reflects the fact that our national commemoration honors everyone who served on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces from November 1st, 1955 to May 17th, 1975. No distinction is being made between veterans who served in country, in theater, or who were stationed elsewhere during the Vietnam War period. All were called to serve. None could self-determine where they were stationed. And all were seen in the same way by a country that could not separate the war from the warrior. Each person who served during this period earned and rightly deserves our profound gratitude and thanks. So today we gather here at Igoe Porter Wellings Memorial Field and bring key attention to this 50th anniversary for 3 key reasons. First, we honor those from Warrington Township and surrounding Bucks County communities who, in the words of President Abraham Lincoln, gave their last full measure of devotion. Special places souls and helps cleanse those who served. Those to whom all of us are family are also counted amongst the 58,276 men and women, again average age 22 years and 9 months, whose names are engraved and polished in the black granite of the wall in D.C. Please join me in a moment of silence respecting their collective and ultimate sacrifice. Second, we honor those who served but are no longer among us, as well as their families who endured untold sacrifices in supporting their service. If anyone here who is a family to someone who served during Vietnam but is no longer with us, would you please raise your hand in their place and allow us to honor you both. For the sacrifices you made that enabled your loved one to serve. And finally, we gather today to honor and most graciously and humbly thank the Vietnam veterans living in this community. I kindly ask that everyone who served on active duty at any time from November 1st, 1955 to May 15th, 1975, regardless of duty location, please stand if you're able. and raise your hand so we may recognize and acknowledge your selfless contribution and sacrifice in a way you so richly deserve. And if their families will also please stand and join them, you are also to be commended for the sacrifices you've endured for this country as well. Is it the memory of those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, cutting into our hearts the way their names are engraved here in the wall in D.C.? Or is it the sobering fact that as of March 1st, 2021, the Defense Palmyra Accounting Agency, which is the official agency whose mission is to provide the fullest accounting for our missing personnel to their families and the nation, fulfilling our nation's promise that no service members left behind, reports that 1,584 personnel are still considered missing in action? Or is it the more than 350,000 American warriors that carry both seen and unseen scars from this war? Perhaps it is the fact that those who we just recognized uniquely and unequivocally comprehend what a commemorative ceremony such as this truly represents. After all, they served and sacrificed, yet never received the duly deserved thank you, nor the cheers, nor the parades. And astonishingly, though profoundly impacted by unimaginable and incomprehensible, they quietly slipped back into the lives they had left to live. There's no denying that 50 years is too long to wait. Regardless, it is vital that each and every Vietnam veteran and their families understand the prominent place you occupy in the conscience of our nation and the high measure of esteem in which you are held by friends, neighbors, and fellow countrymen. Over the past 8 years, more than 11,000 federal, state, and local organizations, including our own Warrington Township Veterans Committee, have come alongside the Department of Defense as commemorative partners with the Vietnam War Commemoration Program. These partners have cumulatively hosted more than 18,000 ceremonies in towns and cities throughout the country to publicly and individually honor and thank more than 2.6 of the 6.2 million Vietnam veterans and their families thus far. Clearly, there is more work to be done. With these accomplishments at the annual National Vietnam War Veterans Day, we as a nation are headed in the direction of remarkable progress in pursuit of this noble mission. Today we have the distinct privilege to add to those numbers. As a lasting memento of the nation's gratitude, the commemoration designed a Vietnam veteran lapel pin with the intent of having commemorative partners publicly present one to each veteran who served during the Vietnam War period. This lapel pin is beautifully struck and features an eagle's head representing courage, honor, and dedicated service, stripes representing our nation's flag, and 6 stars representing the allies who served, sacrificed, and fought alongside one another, all encircled by a ring of blue, matching the canton of 1955 and May 15, 1975, regardless of location, to come forward and remain for a photo opportunity as we are privileged to present your lapel pin. Normally we would ask everyone to hold your applause, but as every member comes up, please feel free to applaud each one of them, because 50 years is a long time coming. So if all that served during that time period would please come up, we do want to present the lapel pins.
to see so many. Okay, now we're ready for our benediction by Pastor Steve Heck. Please remove your covers.
Father, we thank you for the men and women who were raised up to defend freedom, our country, what is good. Told us in your word that as we were to pray, that we should pray that your will would be done on earth as it is in heaven, which teaches us that what goes on earth is not always your will. We thank you for those who have risen up to defend what is good, what is honorable, and what is freedom. We thank you for this time to remember. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Please stand for taps. Remain standing for the retreat of the colors. Well, that concludes our ceremony today. Please join us for